Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Saudara Yayasan Menteri Luar, rakan-rakan yang dimuliakan, duta-duta, Saudara Profesor Faiz, adalah satu penghormatan sekali lagi untuk bersama dalam sidang antarabangsa berpangkalan kepada ASEAN dengan ISIS untuk menjadikannya wacana yang segar. Kita saling bergantung, ASEAN agak kukuh, kohesif sebagai satu kumpulan kerana kita meneruskan wacana yang segar. Dan kita tahu bahawa dalam kemelut dunia perdagangan dan konflik geopolitik antarabangsa, kekuatan rantau itu menjadi paksi bagi kita kembangkan ekonomi dengan menjamin kestabilan politik. Kebijaksanaan ASEAN ialah dapat mempertahankan suatu pendirian yang sederhana, mempunyai hubungan yang akrab dengan semua rantau dan tidak mengambil pendekatan yang keras, kerana hubungan antarabangsa itu menjadi suatu paksi dan landasan yang kukuh. Dan Menteri Luar Pemasan yang sepatutnya menyampaikan pandangan ini kerana beliau lebih arif dan selalu memantau saya. Takut-takut saya memberikan gambaran yang agak melanggar pendirian ASEAN dan Kementerian Luar selama ini. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, today we stand as witnesses to an international order mired in crisis and uncertainty, swept by the tides of major power rivalry, strained by geo-economic pressures, and increasingly challenged by non-traditional security issues. These are not unfamiliar to us, but their impact, especially here in Southeast Asia, has never been so acutely felt. It has compelled us to reassess our strategic outlooks, revisit our national priorities, and navigate the growing complexities of our relationship. We find ourselves at a pivotal juncture. Will we remain bystanders as the world reconfigures itself, or will we choose to be agents of change? Do we reassess long-standing alliances of friendships, or do we reaffirm multilateral cooperation in the service of humanity? Now, ASEAN has laid a solid foundation that has guided us through disputes and crises, be it sovereignty and border issues, the scourge of pandemics, or climate disasters. It has anchored our economic integration through initiatives like the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership and the coming future, the Digital Economic Framework Agreement. We will continue to place our trust in ASEAN's founding principles and its enduring potential. But we must go further in strengthening our collective resolve. And I am fortunate to chair with establishing excellent relations with the King, President, and Prime Ministers throughout ASEAN. The most contentious issues, even in Myanmar, when I decided to meet both the SEC Prime Minister, Senior General, and also NUG Prime Minister, when I engaged our leaders, there was immediately some consensus. Immediate peace, ceasefire, and unrestrained humanitarian assistance. So through Excellencies, Ambassadors, and High Commissioners, may I express my profound thanks. I would not be able to do this without their total support and trust. And this is something which I consider a remarkable feat in terms of bilateral and international relations. I'm leaving now to Johor and I've often reiterated this point, that it's hardly any country that I know of, or in terms of bilateral relations, where you have two countries based on trust and commitment to uplift the living conditions of both countries, establish that joint Johor-Singapore economic zone. And similarly, with the border with Thailand, we're working relentlessly to forge its new understanding, economic relationship, to ensure that the poorer provinces in the south and of Thailand and the poorer provinces in the north of Malaya can work together to build this economic relationship that could propel growth and therefore resolve some of the outstanding issues. So we still continue to have border disputes. I'm not highlighting too much about Cambodia, Thailand now, because as you know, Malaysia is a maritime country. We have border issues with all countries. And, but that has not stopped us from focusing on our priorities, excellent bilateral relations, peace and security, and working together in all issues, economic, cultural, political, educational, and I think that should be the way forward. So Malaysia in that sense is fortunate. When we assume the ASEAN chairmanship this year, we were able to explore and expand this horizon. So, but this year is of course a year of significance, not only for our region, but our shared hopes and aspirations. Now, as agents of change, our role must not merely reflect ASEAN's values, but we must attempt to shape them. We must confront the hard truth about our regional architecture, renew our commitment to shared responsibilities, and strengthen cooperation beyond just rhetoric. We are preparing for a world wrought with challenges and must enhance regional integration. With respect to the American ambassador, I still use enhance and not enhance. No, this standard joke I have with Ambassador Kagan, because when I used to teach Georgetown, and every time I say enhance, they would smile. It sounds, exciting to the students. Because we say enhance or water, please, they will correct my English. They say enhance, sir, and water, please. Oh, not easy to deal with these American guys. Now, so the challenge must be to enhance regional integration, develop additional economic ties, and tap future catalysts of growth, including digital transformation, the exponential surge of artificial intelligence, and energy transition. And again, during the last ASEAN meeting with Vietnam, and I understand Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, and Singapore were able to decide and forge through this ASEAN power grid. Phenomenal feat and progress in terms of having this alternative energy and the ASEAN power grid. Now we are working again towards upgrading existing trade agreements among member states and dialogue partners. And I've said this repeatedly. Our strength is to secure peace and understanding. Our limitation is the lack of intra-ASEAN trade and joint investments, which now has been the new focus of ASEAN leaders. And more so, in the face of rising protectionism, we must remind ourselves that trade is not a sideshow of security. It is part of the scaffolding that holds the region together. When trade falters, fractures flow. To the resounding success of the ASEAN GCC China summit last month demonstrates not just ASEAN's convening power, but also our keen focus on leveraging economic synergies and building institutional collaboration. The conclusion of the Digital Economic Framework Agreement will unlock the enormous potential of the region's digital economy. More importantly, the increased intra-regional connectivity will open up new opportunities for local businesses to expand their reach across the region. As the world moves toward embracing a greener, more sustainable economy, ASEAN has continued to adopt to better leverage on opportunities and partnerships. We are doubling down on energy transition and better practices, such as the development of sustainable investment guidelines and the ASEAN Power Grid. Beyond its economic potential, sustainable development is an urgent task because of the adverse impacts of climate change towards people's livelihoods. A truly people-centered ASEAN can only be achieved with a greener and more resilient region. So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, there are other specters looming around us: great power, rivalry, gross inequality in countries and in the region, transnational crime, and territorial disputes. The path ahead is to close ranks and act in unison in facing these challenges so that they do not weaken ASEAN as a bloc. As we reflect on these lingering challenges, one which a lasting solution remains elusive is the civil war in Myanmar. Now, Malaysia deems it a profound responsibility to mobilize every viable ASEAN mechanism and cooperate with all partners towards the de-escalation of violence and further down the road a Myanmar-led and Myanmar-owned peace process. Now, the recent earthquake in Myanmar is a stark reminder that natural disasters do not wait for the semblance of stability where they strike. This was not just another humanitarian crisis, it was a moral test for all of us in the region. And it was a remarkable feat when you have Thailand moving immediately to support. We have the Smart Team Singapore, among the first to reach there. We have Malaysia with its military field hospital set up in the region. And we have all countries, Philippines, Vietnam, all coming to the fore without even having to engage and plan and coordinate. We just move with such speed, and again, I'm proud to see that, you know, ASEAN has grown and mature enough going there, but still giving that consistent message: no compromise, but must be a ceasefire. No compromise by humanitarian assistance without discrimination. And passing this message, begin inclusive dialogue with all parties. Now, our actions, therefore, must go beyond the transactional. It must be transformative. And so, I continue to implore my colleagues, my brothers and sisters, particularly in Myanmar and with ASEAN, to strengthen our collective resolve to work towards a peaceful and resilient Myanmar. Now, our ministers are there in Washington, D.C. We can bring up this tariffs issue with the United States. This morning I received a message from our Minister of MITI and Finance, Second Finance Minister, that the meetings with the Secretary of Commerce, U.S. Trade representatives has been excellent, and we always emphasize the need not only to secure what is fair for Malaysia, but we always present the case for ASEAN. and I have urged my colleagues within ASEAN to do likewise. Present a bilateral position, but at the same time emphasize the need for ASEAN to remain a very cohesive and effective bloc. The imposition of unilateral tariffs by the United States is, of course, admittedly, a significant challenge to our nation and the region, as we are deeply plugged into global supply chains. Some may not appreciate the predicament you are facing. 60% of our semiconductor E&E products from Malaysia are exported to the United States. 60%. So you can imagine the concern, not only of government, but Malaysians generally, about the need to secure a fair resolution to this issue. Therefore, we remain consistent in our resolve, and I must emphasize that the ASEAN consensus reached both by the finance ministers and the trade ministers earlier, and the foreign ministers, culminating in the final communique by ASEAN leaders. We emphasize the point that the international trade must be governed by transparent rules and legal predictability, not by unilateralism or coercive economic measures. Disruption in trade and supply chain will leave detrimental effects on businesses and hamper economic growth, further impacting efforts toward ensuring the socio-economic well-being of the people. That said, Malaysia will continue to engage constructively with the United States, China, and the European Union, India, and others in advancing our national and regional interests. And let there be no doubt, Malaysia's strategy of active non-alignment is a deliberate and principled framework designed to maximize strategic flexibility, preserve decision-making autonomy, and engage all partners on our terms. Over the past 2 years, Malaysia has reached out to like-minded partners in the global south to bridge regions, build collective resolve, and promote shared prosperity. Our focus is clear: pragmatic, coordinated, and action-oriented cooperation. It is in this spirit that we have revitalized our pursuit of greater inter-regional connectivity and cooperation. It has been a catalyst not only for our efforts in global south mobilization, but in encouraging greater coordination with the global north in this endeavor. The recent reinvigoration of BRICS to include members and partner countries from the Middle East, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, Africa, and South America is the very essence of bridging regions. It is an opportunity to build new partnerships and renew old ones. Malaysia looks forward to collaborating as partner country and finding new avenues of niche area of cooperation. Contrary to reductionist perspectives on why several South Asian countries are engaging in BRICS, it is neither about taking sides nor moving away from the West. It is a manifestation of agency, autonomy, and the trust in sustained cooperation to address shared challenges. Yet again, events in the Middle East have made it patently clear how the tables of diplomacy could be instantly overturned by the fury of calculated violence. The incessant, punitive, and unprovoked Israeli strikes on Iranian territory, undertaken even as crucial talks were underway, are certainly aimed at shattering the possibility of dialogue itself. We are for effective engagement. We are for unconditional peace in the region. Because if we allow actions carried out with utter impunity, violating international law, and eroding the norms that hold global order together, we will, of course, have a bleak future for all of us. Therefore, we have to have the courage to call on those with power and influence to speak plainly and act decisively to restrain further escalation. And of course, in Gaza, people do ask me, why do I continue to repeat this? It's a far distant land, but the ramifications here was pervasive, from the urban to the rural areas. The people expect us to voice out, to take steps. Of course, some even call for extreme measures. The most we need to do is, of course, to voice our concerns, to call for sanity to prevail. Because the relentless assault that continues against defenseless population and exacting a toll of human suffering just defies comprehension. Now, the staggering civilian casualties that we see every day, overwhelmingly women and children, demand far more than pious proclamations of concern. They require concerted international action to uphold humanitarian law, secure an immediate ceasefire, and ensure the unfettered delivery of aid to those in desperate need. The credibility of the so-called rules-based order is on trial. And of course, to our west, the unresolved tensions between Pakistan and India remain a delicate fault line. Their future hinges not only on old grievances, but also on present choices, whether to invest in stability or to continue edging towards the cusp of catastrophe. Elsewhere, in the Asia-Pacific, the same pressures play out with different scripts. In the Taiwan Straits, the Korean Peninsula, and the South China Sea, familiar flashpoints flicker. And the ASEAN resolve is clear in terms of our strong position against the continued display of arrogance and by the North Korean regime. So here, as ever, we must insist on the primacy of dialogue over disruption, of law over disorder, of restraint over escalation. Malaysia believes the future of this region lies not in hardened blocks of fragile balances, but in a security architecture that is inclusive, predictable, one in which active non-alignment is not merely tolerated, but enabled to thrive. While we do not pretend to be able to reshape the region to fit our ideals, we can act to prevent worse outcomes. Stability is not guaranteed, but neither is chaos inevitable. What we do now, how we manage tensions, balance relationships, and defend our interests will decide how the region weathers the storm ahead. Terima kasih. Thank you.
Well, that was indeed a great speech, which has been circulated at this point of time. And we now actually come to the pièce de résistance, which is the Q&A. The Prime Minister was asking me, will there be a Q&A? Knowing very well, indeed, we are all here for the Q&A. As we have done in the previous last 2 years, I will be pretty strict on the protocol involved. Raise your hand and we'll call on you. Introduce yourself very briefly. I mean, we are not, inviting CVs and things like that. So just get the question, thank you, and sit down. Perhaps the Prime Minister will take 2 or 3 questions at one go, and then before we answer on that. So on the quick note, perhaps, yes, Simon.
No, I reach an agreement with the Foreign Minister, the more, should say, sensitive, difficult foreign ministerial issues, he will answer.
Thank you. Prime Minister, thank you for a wonderful speech. I'm Simon Tay from Singapore and the Institute of International Affairs. Malaysia has previously been the chair of ASEAN when we accepted many more ASEAN members, and this year, under your chairmanship, we've come to an agreement to bring in Timor-Leste. Would you, with your deep knowledge of this issue and close relationship with the leadership of Timor-Leste, share with us a little bit of your view of how, in 5, 10 years, this might work out?
Thank you, Simon. Yes. Next one. Ambassador Train, yes.
Honorable Mr. Prime Minister, I'm Mike from the DAV of Vietnam. Thank you for honor with your presence at the ASEAN Futures Forum earlier this year. And congratulations on the success of the ASEAN chairmanship so far. Are you concerned about another hot issue coming to your profile under this year's chairmanship? That is the border issue between Thailand and Cambodia. Have you planned to call the 2 countries' prime on the issue? Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps over to the extreme right there, yes. I think that's, yeah, okay, right. Is your mic on?
I asked about the South China Sea, if you see any prospects for...
Loud and clear, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, yes. Perhaps just one more question. Yes.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your very enlightening words. My name is Volker Pertes from Germany, think tanker and former UN Undersecretary General. I would like you to elaborate, if you so wish, on the structure of the international system and what it means for Malaysia and for ASEAN. You spoke very strongly about the need to deepen multilateralism. What we see is a development of multipolarity. You see a contradiction between these 2 trends, and how do you think that ASEAN can shape this international order? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, there'll be 4 questions. Some are linked, and the Prime Minister will handle that now.
On Timor-Leste, not only the Foreign Minister, but many of our leaders have engaged consistently with Sanana and also Ramos Horta. Now, it's a difficult road because fulfilling the pillars, including the economic pillar, was a challenging task. And they are aware that ASEAN leaders concede, just to secure their entry with the clear understanding that they will try their level best to meet the requirements. The ASEAN Secretary has been quite active in this, getting teams ready, and I've appealed for all countries to send teams so that the legal system, the financial system, the parliamentary process works, at least with the minimum requirements to meet the ASEAN position and requirements, and what we call the challenge, of course, the economic pillar. But what the understanding we secure is, first, for countries to go and engage, to promote trade and investments, and at the same time to use that opportunity to build institutions. Thus far, we are quite satisfied with the level of commitment, although admittedly some of these areas are rather slower than what we anticipated earlier. I mentioned this clearly to President Ramos Horta and to Sanana earlier last month. But I think this is a position that all of us have to take. So which means in the next 5 years, I think they will be much more established. They have, of course, important minerals, and they are getting involvement of many companies. I had this meeting with ConocoPhillips yesterday, who seems to be quite, Ryan, you know, the president CEO of ConocoPhillips, very bullish about the prospect in Malaysia and Sabah, but also in Timor-Leste. And he said that he's very optimistic of that possibility of getting, you know, large revenues for the country, for Timor-Leste. And this to me is of course an encouraging sign, because Timor-Leste takes a position of open and fair trade, free to all countries, like most of the ASEAN countries are adopting. On the issue of Vietnam, question about Vietnam, on Thai-Cambodian border, it's unfortunate there was this alleged leak of this conversation between Pai Tang Tan and Hun Sen. But I think the interest is, of course, to try to cool off the tensions. In my discussions with Prime Minister Hun Manet and Prime Minister of Thailand, both have agreed that they would at least continue with this sort of engagement. And that was supposed to be just before the 14th this month. Now, they did not achieve too many results, but at least for a time secure this understanding, no provocations, no presence of, you know, strong combative military personnel, and just secure that understanding that the more contentious areas dealt with probably in a more sober, controlled, restrained manner. And I tell them, and they know too, and this relates to the question of South China Sea. Malaysia is a maritime country. We still have unresolved problem with Singapore. I know Singapore are tough negotiators. But that does not stop, High Commissioner, that we can establish the best of relations with Singapore on all issues: security, trade, immigration, custom, you name it. So this one contentious or unresolved issue, fair, you continue to negotiate. With Brunei, we have problems. But with Tuanku Sultan, we managed to get, you know, everything, all measures and comprehensive understanding and stability. With Indonesia, we have issues. With the Philippines, with Thailand. So with Vietnam, we have a joint development authority. And Thailand, of course, very successful JDA with Thailand, now with Petronas and PTT. So why then highlight only on the issue of this seemingly problematic, contentious issue of borders, including South China Sea? Now, and the South China Sea, we have continued to engage, and the ASEAN position is to make sure, first, related to UNCLOS, you know, clear decision by all ASEAN countries, UNCLOS until 82, at the same time to have a commitment to secure this understanding based on the COC, Code of Conduct. And I think we should proceed on that level. And the faster we resolve this among ASEAN countries and with China, the better it is for the region. But thus far, we have to control to make sure that the continuous commissions, including between China and the Philippines, is controlled. I think both in my discussions with Premier Li Qiang and also with No, no, I'm not claiming to be the mediator of a sort, but I happen to be hosting many of this meeting. I invariably have to raise this issue, but both of issue of code of conduct, of not wanting to escalate, seems to be the understanding. And Bob Marcos made the same assertion. We'll try and avoid the best of our ability. Now on the ASEAN and multilateralism, yes, sorry. Well, we are a small country, a small region, but a dynamic one, a pragmatic one. As you know, ASEAN happens to be relatively the most peaceful region and vibrant economically. I think our focus is therefore to secure these economic fundamentals, and that can only work and happen in an open trading system, rules-based and multilateral principle. Now, it doesn't seem to be the trend, but we will have to work. As a region, we believe strongly, unequivocally on multilateralism and value-based. When we talk about growth, we cannot leave the issues of values and humanity. That's why we should be consistent in our views. And that's what we learn. I mean, even when people start, being a bit cynical about the American position, I would say that, look, there are things I learned about Jeffersonian ideals and democratic values and habits of the heart of Alexis de Tocqueville, all American or French, it does not matter. To us is the issue of values and humanity, and that transcends race or religion or regions. And I hope this would prevail ultimately. Arigatou gozaimasu. Masan, you have to add? Yes, sure.
We still have a couple of
minutes. I'm on track, right?
We still have a couple of minutes more. There were some hands which I couldn't call just now. You can raise them now. Yes. Right at the center. Over there. Bukan. Bukan ni. Sana. No. There, at the end.
Thank you, Prime Minister. My name is Ivy. I'm from Our Right Insights. I heard you mention that there should be a Myanmar-led and Myanmar-owned peace process. May I clarify, do you mean the people of Myanmar or the current regime of Myanmar? And my subsequent question is, how confident are you that the new approach that Malaysia is putting forward on the Myanmar issue this year is going to be effective in bringing a good resolution to the issue? Thank you.
Thank you. Over there, the left side, yes, somebody.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Datuk Seri. My name is Abhinav Sitaraman, and
could you please stand up? Sorry, could you please? I can't hear you, sir. Thank you. Yes. Oh, you're not using the mic. Okay.
Thank you very much, Datuk Seri. My name is Abhinav Sitaraman. I'm from the US, here as part of the Pacific Forum's Young Leaders Program. Really appreciate your remarks from this morning. My question for you is, we often hear that the US has invested more in ASEAN than countries like India, China, Japan, and Korea combined. However, I also noticed that many of these investments are concentrated in Singapore, a significant chunk of them. So in a time where we clearly see the role of the US and the way the US engages through its government with the world, and especially with Southeast Asia changing, we've also seen the American...
I'm sorry, could you just get to the question?
Yeah, we've seen the American private sector play a more proactive role in terms of conducting foreign policy. My question is, how do you see Malaysia's role in sort of engaging with American businesses now going and evolving going forward? Thanks.
Thank you. Oh, one more, that's it. Yeah.
Very good morning, and thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, for your wonderful speech. My question is very brief, talking about the threats around us and eroding rules and the importance of multilateralism more than ever. Where do you place Europe in that context? And if I may ask also Germany including, because I am from the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think let European leaders start reading about Konrad Adenauer. They may help their understanding of the need for multilateral perspective and engaging on some of the issues. And I thank you, because the Stiftung was helpful in also working with civil society here in Malaysia. Now, on Myanmar, how confident am I? I mean, there's no certainty. Something must be done. We must continue to engage. No concessions. I mean, the issue of ceasefire, there was conditional. I mean, I said to Prime Minister, Senior General, I said, look, one, immediate ceasefire. Number two, access to humanitarian assistance. Number three, inclusive dialogue. Where they have not done so, the same message I gave to the NUG. And that's the beginning. And that I did on behalf of my colleagues in ASEAN. And all ASEAN, both intelligence outfit and foreign ministry has been also helping in this direction. There's a consistent message. And hopefully, again, my principle is this issue of sanity must prevail. Because otherwise, the country is distraught. Poverty is endemic. And the system is failing. But you know, we are not talking about system and generals and prime ministers. We are talking about the people. What is the future of the younger generation? So hopefully it's working. And I mean, of course, monitoring on a weekly basis. Even yesterday with Ramos Horta, Myanmar happens to be one of the major topics we discuss informally. So I think let us move on. Is it easy? No. It's decades of enmity and hatred. But there is no solution except an immediate ceasefire, end to the violence. Because I told both of them that, you see, Malaysia affected, of course, with Myanmar is our neighbor, it's part of ASEAN. But also the problem is passed on to other countries. Thailand is having huge problems. Bangladesh and Malaysia, almost 200,000, mainly Rohingyas. So we will have to speak up. We'll have to take action. And would be, to me, shameful if ASEAN doesn't take this baton as part of a responsibility. Of course, we welcome Europe or America or China or the rest. They can come in and help. But it is an ASEAN responsibility. It's the immediate task of the neighbors. Now, on U.S. investments, I think there is probably some misinformation here. U.S. investments cumulatively is still #1 in Malaysia. Our engagement with the U.S. businesses has been very active. Of course, they have been very successful in Singapore. And so Malaysia, from the days of Motorola, Intel, those days until now, one of the great research centers set up by Intel in Penang, USM, is one of the remarkable feat. How this transfer of technology has worked. And in our Kulim High Tech now, which brought in Infineon and Google and Microsoft, etc., many of the startups were made by local Malaysians, trained by the initial American investments here through Intel and the rest. So almost all NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google, AMD are all here. And many countries, ASEAN, in Thailand, in Indonesia, in Vietnam, and Philippines, and we do encourage our relations with the ASEAN, US Business Council, Malaysia, US business groups are extremely cordial. And as I told you, ConocoPhillips was here yesterday, very bullish about investments in Malaysia, very committed, wanted to expand into Sabah, and we actually welcome their expansion into Timor-Leste. So I think, let me be clear here that notwithstanding some of our differences on the issue of foreign policy, cannot be too exaggerated, because the bilateral relations remain strong. And ASEAN, without exception, in all our deliberations, though we want to ensure that our working relations and bilateral relations with China remain strong as strong neighbor, huge economic potential, and to ensure security of the region, our traditional relations with the United States, to us, is pivotal. There's no two way about it. People say, well, this is opportunism. No, this is a principle of open trading, nation and region, is a principle of centrality that is now adopted by ASEAN, and that means our not only continued engagement, but aggressive engagement with the United States, with China, with all countries, and now EU. We are getting much closer. I mean, thanks to Trump's tariffs, I think that has led the EU to be more closer to other regions. Otherwise, to EU, just EU, probably United States. I mean, the foreign minister does not like my comment on this, but then I'm just saying it aloud. But what the important thing is that EU is getting much closer to ASEAN now than ever before. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, time does not permit. I'm at liberty to inform you that the Prime Minister actually literally has to fly off to Johor Bahru for another international event. Prime Minister, on behalf of ISIS Malaysia, ASEAN ISIS, we express our profound thanks and gratitude for this wonderful moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister.